Hello and welcome to the link up. As usual, let's do our checkup. How are you feeling today? Are you feeling okay? Is everything going the way that you would like it? And if it's not, how are you dealing with that? Someone reminded me that, we do a body check, a health check. I say, are you feeling chills or a little fever or a little, under the weather? But then I don't remind you that it's also important to do a mental health checkup, So have you had a good chuckle recently? How have you been handling frustrations and so on? But more to the point, how are you doing health-wise? If you have any questions and any doubts, please don't forget to contact your doctor. Now is not the time for you to self-diagnose or to self-medicate. Now, today we're celebrating today with two masters of their craft. Each, in his and her own way, have touched the fabric of this island with their chosen professions, from Professor Pedro Welch, retired Deputy Principal and Professor of Social and Medical History at the UWI Cave Hill. We discuss independence and its impact in 1966 and beyond. And from Irika Jalani, herbalist, farmer, veteran basket weaver, and craftswoman, the importance of the land for our sustenance and also assisting in our medical problems today. So, I ask you to stay with us. It's going to be a lively and informative discussion. Remember, you can participate. We love it when you do. You can watch our stream on Facebook and YouTube, and you can share your comments and questions in real time at CBC Barbados. Professor Welch joins us after the break. The Barbados Independence Act of 1966 was an act of the Parliament of the United Kingdom that granted independence to Barbados with effect from the 30th of November 1966. It also provided for the granting of a new constitution to take effect upon independence, which was done then by the Barbados Independence Order of 1966. But Barbados had been a fully self-governing British colony from 1961. So what changed? What made 1966 the time? And what was Barbados like at that time, socially and politically? Well, we always then go to the experts, the ones who have the knowledge and the expertise to fill us in and let us know exactly, You know, what were the times like then? What made the change? What possibly could have created that decision to go fully independent? Well, we asked Professor Pedro Welch, retired deputy principal and professor of social and medical history at the UWI Phil. Good morning, Professor. It's lovely to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, Peter. How are you doing this morning?
I am well, thank you. I can see that you are as well. That's good.
Yes.
So, in answer to my question, why 1966? What made the landscape then the right time for independence?
Well, to some extent, we have to project our sight backward in time. One of the things that we noticed that the whole question of decolonization had been addressed in 19 and immediately following the Second World War. A number of African countries in particular, but also other British colonies began to think very seriously about the whole question of going it alone. And by the time we got to the West Indies Federation, which was in a sense a kind of one, but all the issue of independence was in fact in the air. Not in the precise terms, but there was an understanding that decolonization was a preferred movement forward. So by the time we get to 1966, the Federation has already ended. With 1966, we are at a stage now where one of those things in here, there was what we call a Black Power revolution that was fomented in Europe. And so the whole question of Black consciousness is all part of a developing political consciousness among the masses, which more or less prepared our people to consider the possibility of moving further. But the political leaders of the time also, once one point is not, it was clear that after that, any number could play. And Errol Walton Barrow used the opportunity to push us a little further along that road of decolonization. That was the atmosphere, the political atmosphere, the social atmosphere. All the best of times, perhaps the worst of times. I recall, let me throw this one here, a very personal note, that it was on November 30th, 1966, that I met my future wife on our first date. Right there on the Garrison Savannah. So I leave that there. I say no more.
Lovely.
On that one.
Lovely. Lovely.
But from that, a very special time,
yes.
Development-wise. Our country there was something called the Portugal model that we were beginning to follow. And there were tremendous developments that were taking place, socially and economically. The class is growing at an exponential rate. And so in that context, it was time for us to take a step forward.
And then you had in the personage of Errol Walton Barrow all of the things that joined to make it the perfect time, you know? That made
yes.
it, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Errol Walton Barrow, the very excellent Errol Walton, unique character, a very unique person, excellently placed. He had, of course, as we all know, served in the Second World War in the Royal Air Force. But apart from that, he'd also gone to the School of Economics, as far as I recall, and he had met with a lot of persons who would eventually become leaders in their own right. Jomo Kenyatta was, and Nkrumah was also there. The colonial leaders who would eventually become the leaders of the independence movement across the British world, a lot of them were in England. And Errol Walton was there at the time. And he met with them, they discussed matters of independence, discuss constitutional development, and he brings in him certain ideas. But apart from that, there was a socialist Fabian socialist ethic to what he'd been exposed to at the university, and he brings that to a discussion on where we could go in the future. And so I think that in terms of his political understanding, his economic, think that he was extremely well placed to push the matter of independence. There are some who felt that this small rock in there in the Caribbean Sea, there was no way that we could go. They could only see in terms of some campgrounds and rural workers. But now, of course, he was seeing something bigger and far better. But he's not alone. There are other people too. I mean, I must give them the credit. In part of a general movement towards a wider thinking. So, yeah. But Walton Barr was a unique person, well placed.
Now, he would have been considered a socialist within a conservative world here in Barbados at the time. So what did he come up against in terms of obstacles and challenges, and then how did he overcome them to let everyone then buy into this whole idea of independence?
Yes, certainly as a socialist. I mean, some people might also have described Sir Grant Adams as persons who viewed Errol Barr with suspicion. That time of Stark, coming from England with all these socialist theories, and some people even label his theories, his views, as Marxist. Now, this is the time when you're into the Cold War in a big way, and so the notion of this man was coming on into the political ascendancy to move was current. Persons who were in the House of Assembly up to the early 1960s, the mid 1960s onwards, who was heard at Errol Barr's this notion that you want to destroy this country. You know, there was a time when there was a mass emigration of many Barbados moved from this country and went to say Australia and New Zealand, many of them, because there was this fear. But Errol Barr was a shrewd reader of the Barbadian polity, and he knew what it was to have the common touch. But quite apart from that, I think what was of a secondary education to the masses. Some of that had begun under the BLP administration previously, but it was under Errol Walton Barr that we saw what they call a social revolution. He had planned that. And that social revolution led eventually to a preparation of our people for this more include in that planning, not only for free secondary education, but the whole question of the University of the West Indies being established in Barbados, in the Cave campus, first at the Harbour site and later at Cave Hill.
Yeah.
All that is part of it. And then there's the economic things that we put in place. It was at this time that we begin to have import substitution, have what we call tax holidays, all kinds of things. He was preparing the people for that moment. And he always felt, in my view, that if we had a positive mirror image of ourselves, there was nothing that could limit our development.
Now, there were, however, on the other side, there were some who said that the time was not right, that now was not the time. Did they come around? And I'm not talking in how soon did they come around to realize that perhaps this is not as crazy a thought as we think.
We say that the proof of the pudding is in
the eating. Yeah.
And in fact, I think most of the opposers understood that something was happening. It was not only in Barbados, but through the Caribbean. They understood that. And it didn't take long for them to come on board. In fact, I think they've quickly recognized once the first couple of years that their turn might eventually come to straight, so that they were, I said, on board very, very quickly. And, and 2 years demonstrate very clearly that all Barbados administrations after Errol Walter, everything, they all fitted very easily and seamlessly into this independence. I mean, it was not something that they were going to be opposed to.
Right.
Very long. They were fully on board.
I want you to describe for me the Barbadian of that era. You did mention that we can't really describe, or discuss this in 1966. We've got to take a step back. So we've come out of the World War, and before that were the 1937 riots. But we've come out of the World War. We've had members of the population who have been in the war. People have been affected, their livelihoods, you can't get goods and supplies. And what type of Barbadian was formed or shaped out of that particular era?
Certainly, we might wish to note that the era of the 1950s and the 60s was also the era of the Windrush generation.
That's right.
A number of our people had migrated to Erika. There was migration of sugar workers into Florida, another place. And we do have, at that particular, I said, we do have an expectation of the expansion of our education opportunity. So our people have come through a very serious period. I mean, there were still remnants of that period. I tell many of the young people that I encounter that in the early 1960s, that a large proportion, I told them that there was a case where toilet paper was a luxury. Some people didn't have that. That there were people who would use, in some cases, peach leaves. And some of my young people would look at me with a surprise. What are you talking about? They asked. I said, yes, peach leaves. And shocked you did not have that, and you happen to live in the country area where there was some smooth, soft, place. Some that might become available to do the necessary ablutions. But nevertheless, don't let me get too deep into that, because I try to paint a picture. The vast majority of our people were still working in the rural plantation sector. But the vast majority of people were there. So that by the time, a lot of remnants of what I call the historic past, the inequalities and inequities of the past were still, some of those elements were still around. And so that, in fact, makes what happened after revolutionarily. The Barbados of, let's say, by 1974 years, compared to the Barbados of, let's say, 1961, too many changes had taken place. Or people, though, because of, as I said, because of migration, because of increased opportunities, the coming of television, the broadening of social media of the time, were becoming an aware people. Yes, there were still some pockets of equity, inequality, but I think our people were sufficiently educated by that time to look at their condition and aspire to something else. Our older people had already prepared the way by pushing our young people towards education. Go and get educated. In other words, I don't want you working. That's careful. We are not saying that that working in plantation was something evil in itself. But what we are saying is that they associate the plantation with palm grass gangs and little children working for pittance. They're associated with their past. So the notion was our children will not. Famous no cane blade speech that the issues, people miss it, some people miss it, this is what he's talking about. But really he was talking about moving us away from a system that promoted mendicancy.
Right.
A system, but towards a system that promoted self-reliance.
Right. Okay.
That's the kind of Barbados, yes.
All right. We're going to take a quick break and we will continue our chat with Professor Welch, and we keep our fingers crossed that the internet allows us to continue that conversation.
Okay.
We're celebrating us today on the Link Up and taking a look at 1966 and the years before that, the time that would have shaped, the decision to go it on our own. And we're chatting with Professor Pedro Welch, and some interesting times, and I think that we are now so spoiled that we can't even begin to imagine the life that you are describing, and yet it is an era which shaped some of our finest minds. People who then left, went overseas, they studied, and they returned then to make the country a better place, for us all. So I find it very interesting when one hears about the way that people lived and the decisions sometimes that they had to make. Some, like the Windrush generation, leaving their home, their families, people they loved, all that they knew, and venturing into the unknown, and meeting some obstacles and challenges up there as well. My question has always been, how we perceived Great Britain. I don't think Great Britain looked at us in the same way.
Well, certainly coming along, and that we must understand that there was a legacy that was bequeathed to us by the socialization, colonial socialization. I came along the time when we sang the God Save Our Gracious Queen, those songs. There's still our history. In fact, we did not study Western history. Foundation school. Our study was that of British history. I remember the book, The Tudors and the Stuarts.
Yes.
That's what we studied.
I did as well.
So yes. That's what we did. So that we had we really had no knowledge. We think Africa was the quote unquote the dark continent. We had no idea. It was not I came to my last year of school, secondary school, that they introduced into this what is then called the O-level syllabus, the history syllabus, a little piece on history. So for us, Britain was still there during the Windrush period. They were also part of what they called the mythology, because they were sending back money, British pounds. I don't know if you could remember the old blue envelopes that you wrote
yes.
and then folded them.
Yes.
And you sent those back. So for us, me personally, as I think about it, I went to England in 1967. My father had just been given a job at Cable and Wireless, and took us all because he got that privilege. And we entered a store in London, not far from Hyde Park, and that store had a sign which said blacks. So that time when although
what did the sign say? What did the sign say? Because
blacks, blacks and dogs not allowed.
What?
Blacks and dogs not allowed. That was in 1967. Notwithstanding our romanticized views of what Britain, the mother country, it's a lovely place to visit. But the fact remains that the two worlds were extremely distant. So although we were considered Little England, that related to only one piece of our existence. So our people viewed Britain with some kind of, and then when you hear, I said, when you got the gifts coming from abroad, that cemented the view, well, this must be this place that we could look to. So when the Queen visited, or when Princess Margaret visited, or when whoever visited from the royal family, these children would be lined up on the streets with waving flags and singing all kind of.
I remember doing that.
Well, that was how it was for us. Notwithstanding the movement towards the Republican status, I still believe that the socialization that we had over these generations has still left us with a genuine fondness, if we would call it that, for Britain. Yes, we prefer to go to the USA because that's where the money is, as far as we are concerned. Or we suppose we look at Canada, but the place that looms large in Britain. And I do not think that the Republican status will change that particular view, particularly when some of us still have relatives who we relate to, who migrated to Britain and have become black British. So that is where it is.
What do you think is the reason for some of the pushback that we're getting? And I'm glad you introduced that, because that was going to be my next question. But what do you think is the reason for some of the pushback towards becoming a republic?
I must confess that I've been involved in a few discussions within recent times that the pushback is born out of ignorance. I applaud the government's decision to move us towards a Republican status. At the same time, however, I bemoan the lack of education. This is not only of this administration. All the previous administrations, in my view, let the ball drop. They call a systematic, deep education of the people in their language and in their culture. There's nothing that says that we should not have been having songs, calypsos, folk songs, popular works of literature, the whole question of our movement in this direction. We have, of course, in the past, of my skin. You have growing up stupid under the Union Jack.
Yes.
So we have all those, but those books are what we call distant memories, almost. So we needed to have, in my view, a very deep, very prolonged period of education that have, and as has been some consultation. My question always is consultation with whom? And that the large body of the masses have not really been included in the process. So don't be surprised if Republic Day comes and passes and there's no real enthusiasm. It's not because people hate the idea, understand what they're talking about, and especially if their daily lives. In fact, I'll tell you something, COVID-19 period and all the economic issues related are distractions. They're distracting. People are concerned with what's going to happen. Am I going to keep my job? Am I going to remain healthy?
Yes.
And in that context, we shouldn't be surprised if there's some apathy. We should not have to stop the process of going towards republic, but we have to be aware and we have to be honest that we've lost an opportunity to really fully engage with the masses. That is my view.
Well, perhaps we'll engage after, perhaps we will take the opportunity, to enlighten everyone. I know people ask me and my colleagues, so what does this really mean? And some of the questions asked, you realize that as you said, that there is a level of ignorance, and that's in its truest sense, that they're not really certain, so will the Prime Minister still be the Prime Minister? And you try to explain, well, yes, she will still be the Prime Minister. We're just simply, no longer going to have the Queen as our head of state. Everything else will remain unchanged. There will have to be some changes to names of certain agencies or certain structures, but maybe some will remain for historic purposes, so yeah, the discussion, I think, will still continue. It will definitely continue. But it was a step it was the next step in our development.
Yeah, well, a next step. I'm sorry for my apparent correction there.
That's fine.
But a journalist, very recently, that our horizon is more than the Republic. I mean, who's to say that a coming administration 10 years from now, 20 years from now, might not think of another type of development? I have a vision of a Barbados in which our first past the post system, that's part of the political structure we have, that we take into the Republican stage to consider a kind of proportional representation, where whatever happens in elections, we never have a situation again in Barbados. In fact, I wish this to the entire Caribbean. We never have a situation in the Caribbean, in Barbados, where we have a votation for a mass party that got a significant proportion of the vote. That's the change. So who knows? Republican is a step. There may be other steps in the future. Who knows? I don't know if I live to see all the new steps, but
Same.
I hope I do.
Same.
Yeah.
But yes, it's an interesting time, in which we live. And did you ever, as a historian, I mean, think that perhaps we would be seeing something like the Spanish flu, you know, and what that created, you know, a century ago? We're now facing that, and the challenge as a global economy, which I was telling someone that, you know, we're living in a world which technically has no borders anymore. You know, you can leave one country and be in another within hours, where it used to take months or weeks, you know, before. So we have no borders anymore, so we're closer than we think and more connected than we imagine.
Yes, be more closely connected, and let me suggest to you as well that the whole means that even if we couldn't travel physically, you know, to the world over and away, to use the English expression, we are there. We can see it. We can almost experience it. You can see the snow. You can't feel it. You can't feel it, something. But there's a time when I was a youngster, when you heard about winter, you had no conception of what winter looked like. you heard about it. You could go on your computer. You can see all of these things. So I mean, yes, what is available to us nowadays, I say it changes some the landscape somewhat, and I have absolutely no doubt in my own mind that as we develop further, we are going to see the fruition of the dreams that people had many years ago. You mentioned the Spanish flu. A lot of people will not be aware historically of the number of epidemics that we passed through. I'm currently editing 1,000 pages of reports by British doctors, naval doctors, in the early 19th century, of the yellow fever epidemics that hit Barbados.
Yes.
Killed thousands of people in Barbados. In fact, when people in England took on this in those days, as recorded by an author called Pinkert, who wrote a book around, that would be, I think it was 1799 or thereabouts. They said, poor fella, when the fellas left, they're going from here to a white man's grave. That was the notion.
Wow.
So you had that. You had a series of cholera epidemics that killed thousands of people.
Exactly.
So thousands of them. And then you move towards the early 20th century. You had a smallpox epidemic in Barbados around 1903, 1904, where people were running from the vaccination. It's not new.
No.
People were hiding their relatives from in Barbados. The authorities had to pass laws governing that kind of thing. The 1940s, and then you had an outbreak of meningitis in Barbados that caused the churches to stop having the communion in the regular way. That happened in Barbados. Of course, you intervene in that period. The Spanish flu, which killed 50 million people across the world. So another type of that thing. But I mean, my fear, my concern, is that this pandemic is not going to be over in any foreseeable future. It's going to continue, and by the time it is ended, I do not know if we might not even match the death rate.
We heard now recently that there is another variant that they're keeping their eyes on in South Africa. And so who knows, you know, what you just said might be very prophetic. But yeah, right now though, we are celebrating our independence. We wear our colors with pride, and they're not going to change. Our motto is not going to change, you know, but we've got a full packed weekend of activities leading right into Tuesday. So I'm going to say thank you, Professor Welch. I kept my fingers crossed that the internet would allow us to at least make out what you were saying, and we did to most, you know, to some extent. So thank you very much. Please stay safe and stay well.
Yes. Well, my pleasure, and let me extend the same best wishes to you and the staff there at CBC. Let's stay safe.
Thank you.
I am not so modest to believe that the vaccine was made to kill African people. That's a myth. Have a good day.
Okay, you too. Thank you, sir. All right. Coming up on the link up, we're going to chat with a lady that I'm telling you, that she is so talented. And the things that she is involved in, you know, impacts us all. Creatively, as well as now, you know, with her farm and, you know, the herbal medicines. It's going to be a joy to chat next with Irika Jalani. Irika Jalani, I met many, many moons ago, and when I remember, you know, chatting with her in the early days of my broadcast career, she made the finest basketry you could imagine. It's a joy to see what comes out of those hands and created from that mind. And then she didn't stop there. You know, she's now a herbalist. She's got tons of experience and information, which I'm going to try and at least get a little bit of. But I advise you, don't let it stop here. We're going to talk about her farm as well. Pay a visit, you know, and get some of the stuff, because nowadays we talk about contemporary medicine, Western medicine, but we also talk about complementary medicine, alternative medicine. Those are names of now, but we used to call them, you know, bush tea and that sort of thing from our ancestors. And we've not utilized that knowledge enough, and unfortunately some of the knowledge has not been passed on. And so we need people like Irika, you know, especially in days like these when we're bombarded with all kinds of things they call comorbidities, you know, diabetes, the non-communicable diseases, the hypertension, that sort of thing. You know, this is a good time to chat with Eirika. Good to have you join me on the link up, Eirika. Nice to see you.
Hi, pleasant good day, and thank you for having me on your show today.
I know that one of your biggest passions is living from the land and the importance of, you know, living with what the Lord has created in terms of plant life and plant-based medicine. But how did you get involved? How did you get there? What made you turn to the land and to grow things and to assist people in that sense?
Okay, well, you know, life is a journey, and you have to start from somewhere, and every mile begin with a step, you know, one step, one moment, one day at a time. And it's my lifestyle, um, raising in Barbados with parents of from Vincentian parentage. You know, I've learned a lot. My mother, she passed away last year.
Oh dear, my
Her soul rest in
condolences.
peace. And you know, I've learned a lot coming up over the years, and then trotting and living Rastafari. You know, so my life embrace a holistic and a natural lifestyle, living close to the land and trying to utilize the natural resources that is grown in our immediate surroundings. And it just evolved over time.
Hmm.
And, you know, as the years progress, I've learned, I've picked up along the way. I always like to be amongst the elders and speak to the, you know, what we say, the old people,
Yeah.
because I find it very important to liaise and reason with them so that you can learn things of the past, so that we can live in this present moment and look forward to a brighter and a better tomorrow. So that is the way how I started, you know, and I'm very family oriented. So I like this idea of sustainable development, you know, building that foundation of self-reliance, self-realization, and, you know, looking around us to the beauty of creation,
Yeah.
you know, created by the creator of the universe, and, you know, just being able to breathe the breath of life, you
Hmm.
know, and give thanks and praises every morning you wake and you see the rising sun. And all around us, I live in the countryside, and all around us is filled with greenery, you know, natural habitat.
Hmm.
And as I always say, the old people say, you know, use the natural herbs because herbs is the healing of the nation. And every seed, every tree bearing a seed, you know, is for the food and the meat of man. So I hold on to those principles, and here I am today.
Wonderful. You just said a mouthful there. I envy you, you know, waking up to what you do in the natural area, that you talk about breathing in a time now when breath for some can be difficult. You know, you talk about the healing powers of the land in a time when, you know, we're just depending so much on conventional medicine, but we forget that they're, you know, the creator, as you said, did create plants and so on for us to use and to live by and to live healthily. The older people you speak of lived for some lengthy years, lengthy time because of consuming those things from the ground, and not so much the processed things that we tend to consume now. So talk to me about some of those plants. I know of, you know, you hear about the soursop and the pawpaw and bay leaf. Those are the go-to when it comes to things like diabetes and hypertension. So tell us a little bit about what you have learned. Like, all right, let's take the soursop, Irika. What is special about that particular tree? And people use the leaves to repel insects. You know, people use the leaves for tea. I myself just love the punch. There's nothing like it. So give us a little education.
Okay, let me say from the onset, I'm not here to prescribe
No,
any type
no,
of
no, 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 that's not
Just
it.
from the air, okay? Let me
I
be
know,
clear.
that's it.
But you know, I real plain, I real straight. So let
Yeah,
me clear the air on that part. But what I always learn, any tree that we eat of the fruits can use the leaves as medicine. That is what I was taught. So we use the pawpaw, we use the mango, the breadfruit, the plum. I learned that once it is an edible fruit, the
right.
leaves as well can be used also as food and medicine. Because you see, but you have to know, because some of the herbs are poisonous.
Right.
Again, you have to know the doses. So to be on the safe side, the elders always say once the fruit can be eaten, the leaves can be used also as
Okay.
food and medicine. So we even have, for instance, like you say, the salsa. You know that made in the Caribbean, in Barbados, we love a soursop punch. I came along and you always say, you know, you could eat the soursop hard. It would
Yes.
help avoid bedwetting and so on. You have your black sage, you have the Christmas bush, you know, you have so many different things, the lemongrass, the blue vervain, so many different herbs around us. The cure for oil, you have the leaf of life, and a lot in the olden days, if you have a cold, I came up from the 60s through the 70s, which was a turning point for Pan-Africanism through in Barbados and throughout the whole Caribbean. You know, that was a real uprising. We had Bob Marley bringing the music until the philosophy of a man's skin, until the color of a man's skin is no
Is
more
no more
significant than
significant than the color
right.
of his eyes.
Yes, we had so much, and the whole songs of praise with Peter Tosh and Burning Spear and Bunny Wailer. So then you had the arts, you know, it was a whole revolution. And
Yes.
I always say that Caribbean is born from resilience, rebellion, and revolution.
You do say that.
So and it is in our DNA as African people coming out of colonial slave trade and all the struggles and emancipation and independence, and now we're going into republic. So the you know it's a whole history, you know, and you know history shall recall, and we have to be careful that history don't repeat itself. So we always have to tread carefully. But as it relates to the herbs, so you know, you always hear, well, if you have a cold, I remember coming up, suddenly you got a cough on your chest, beating like a bass drum, or something you got cold coming out your nose, green and yellow, and the elders would find a way to help
It's
us to
true.
heal and to recover. And they would say, drink the bush tea. You have the Cersei bush, you know, bitter like gall. You have ball bush. You have the yellow hawk, you know. They have different herbs there that some are bitter, then you have some are spicy, some had the aroma, you know. So they have different herbs in different categories. And, you know, even though people might see them as bush or rubbish, you know, the elders see them as plants and herbs
Yes.
to heal. It can assist us in our healing traditions.
I
So, you know, one thing,
remember,
you call them different names, especially you hear drink the Cersei bush, cleanse your blood,
cleanse your blood.
ease the aches, the pains, you know, help cool it down, you know. So, yeah, that is the foundation on which we grow.
I remember an aunt of mine, God rest her soul, she showed us a scar that she had on her just the back of her knee, the fleshy part there. and it was a raised scar. But she said it took a while for them to heal it. But what helped was an old lady from the country who told them to pack it with cobwebs. And I remember as a child thinking, cobweb? You mean he thinks that he's spiders, you know? But she said that was what healed it, you know? And it
Yeah.
had taken a while, and that was what eventually healed it. And that was from a little old lady in the country, not a doctor, you know, and that was her suggestion, and it worked. So,
Well, the elders had a lot of remedies
yeah.
that was very unconventional,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really, sometimes heart-wrenching to see that a lot of our practices has been lost
That's it.
through suppression, through oppression, and through negligence.
Yeah.
So today I want to encourage persons, to research, try to learn as much as we can, try to connect with Mother Earth, the sustenance of mankind that provide us with food, all the plants with different plants with fibers for clothing, and also for shelter, all the wood and stuff help us to use as lumber and different materials for our shelter. So nature is something that is very valuable, and sometimes all we look at a lot in terms of money and economics, and this pomp and pride, and this materialistic attitude. But
Yeah.
I always say, if it's one thing, as we've learned, that every man has to face one day, is that aspect of death. So
Yes.
while you're living, enjoy it. While you're living and you wake up every morning, give thanks for life, because it is the most precious gift, that we have, and that is the able to breathe on us. Breath of God, fill us with life anew, that I may love the things thou love and do the
Do
things
the
thou have
things I'll
done.
do.
And the divinity is within ourselves. We cannot look outside of ourselves. We have to go deep within and find that place where we find happiness, where we find joy,
Yes.
and connect with Mother Earth. That's why I say is the sustenance of our existence.
Right. We're going to take a quick break, Irika. When we come back, can we talk about your farm?
Okay.
Okay. We're talking with herbalist Irika Jalani this morning and getting in touch with our roots and, you know, in so many ways, and definitely in touch with the land and the healing power of it. And she's taken it a step further. Irika has a farm. Tell us about your farm, Irika. Tell us, you know, how did that come about? I understand, you know, it makes sense because in steps, you know, and the way that life can take us on a journey. But tell us about the farm.
Okay, as I said, in the 1980s, I started taking up from my mother because she always used to do a lot of craft and teach us how to sew, how to cook, how to bake. And in 1980, trying to look for a career choice. You know, one day I was praying because I love connecting with the energy of spiritual, you know. And I
Mm-hmm.
was praying and he said, show me something to do. And then it just flashed. Yeah, I got it. And I started to weave baskets, which I learned from my Vincentian mother. And, you know, I started going around looking for the grasses and the roots. And that led me then to start to search for land in the countryside. And that's when I moved to St. Andrew in the early 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, going around using the rock balsam, the cane lily, and so on. So me and my husband, Prince Point Jelani, he raised up with farming from his mom and his grandparents. So we always looking for land. And being in Pelican Village over the time, you know, and then we realized, you know, the struggle, and then having to lose my daughter
Oh,
in
yes.
2007. That was really heart-wrenching for me. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I decided then, let me go and start doing some courses. So I went BCC and I did art, studio art, and I came up with a first class honors. And from then, you know, we went, my husband, one day we went to Agrofest and we just applied and we got some land. It was a long time, many days I call and I would ask them, oh, help me out so that it won't get too old, I can able to work it.
Oh,
And we were
gee.
fortunate to acquire some land, for the landless,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how the farm came about. So with the help of my husband, my children, and, you know, members from the community, we have established Ngosi's Farm and Cultural Sanctuary in Turner's Hall, where we grow a wide variety of organic, fresh fruits and vegetables, root crops, you know, culinary herbs, marjoram, thyme, celery, parsley, as well as medicinal herbs, you know,
Mm-hmm.
rosemary, lemongrass, you name it, all the sweet mint, sweet basils, and so on, bay leaf, and, you know, that's where I'm working now at present. So I've after the grief and the stress, I decided, well, and all the problems with you know, we have with Pelican and
Yes.
visitors and all that. Then I decided, yeah, let me move everything to the farm. And during that time too, I pursued my master's degree at University of West Indies, and I was successful in that. So I just merged everything together, and I still continue doing my weaving. I still continue, you know, education, wise, and right now I'm pursuing my PhD and also looking at the use of plants and herbs in cultural studies. So it's been a journey. That's why I say, you know, anytime you have a vision, you
Yes.
know, you take it one step at a time. It might seem hard, it might not be popular, but you just, you know, pursue your good and continue to pray and ask the Holy Spirit, you know, to guide and protect you, you know, be your guardian and your guide and give you the strength. So I say, when all else hope feel like it's lost, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I lift my eyes onto the hills and say, Father, stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. And, you know, call for help from the sanctuary. And I mean, it's Alleyne, the help
Mm-hmm.
who come. It seems, you know, dreary and rough sometimes. But, you know, you cast all cares aside and lean on your guide. So, yeah, we have Ngosi's Farm. And, you know, there we do a number of projects in terms of fun days, summer camps, entertainment, gatherings, Thanksgiving, blessing ceremonies, farm tours, farmers market. And, you know, even in light of this environment, it was very difficult with all the lockdowns and shutdowns.
I
But
was going
one
to
thing I was
ask.
happy.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
going to
one thing I
ask
was
that.
happy about, yeah, one thing I was happy about is that farmers were able to go to their farms, and we find solace there, and it was peaceable, it was open air, away from people, away from crowds. And we spend a lot of time, me and my children and my husband, just working and continue to develop. It's a lot of hard work because, we don't have, sometimes you get assistance from soil, with the tractors and so
Yes.
on. But most time is my hoe and my fork,
Wow.
and I go there with a determined spirit and, ask God to give me the strength and try and persevere. So and then we can really do a lot of the selling. So, but we just continue to work the farm and coming up, I hope in terms of market and so on, I sell my food from the farm, or sometimes we have a space in Cheapside Market, Store 56, where my youngest son, who is now at UWI doing ecology and environmental studies, and my son Irika Jalani, he's a music trumpeter,
Yep, that's right.
and yes,
We're
and my
so
daughter
happy to
Sophia.
see how Kwaku has blossomed. I could not believe it when I said, wait, nah, really? Oh, blessed. Very, very
Yeah.
blessed.
So I try to bring them up
Wonderful.
in that way, to be
Definitely.
self-sufficient, develop entrepreneurship activities. Sometimes
Right.
we go to school and we push education and we just hold on, oh, do this for a job or do this to go and work for somebody. But sometimes that is not always the way. And even though we are talking now about this whole aspect of removing God and bringing in the Creator and all these different discussions that is coming up and talking about, to include Rastafari and so on. But you know what I would say? There's still a lot of discrimination against Rastafari
Yeah.
because even to get a job, they want you to cut your locks. Why? Moving the word God is one thing, but still we are marginalized and victimized just for being natural, just for not using the scissors or comb. Why? I think freedom is a must, and each one has a right to decide their own destiny. And we believe in natural lifestyle, vegetarian food, we call it vital, ital food, and, living off of the resources from the land. If we still have to interact, sometimes you have to go to the doctor to get proper diagnosis. Sometimes you might still have to use conventional medicine if you have a foreign object in
Right.
your body, like a glass bottle, or you get jet with piece. You still have to deal with the doctor. If you have any issue, a broken bone, you still have to go and get operation and so on. So it is a kind of complementary
Right.
lifestyle and not being vain, but being real as to your existence within Earth. So you gotta be wise. You gotta be wise, and I would say, and just remove the discriminatory behavior and accept us for who we are,
What do you
because
think will
don't mind
change
the
that though,
flaws and
Irika?
audience.
What do you
I just
think?
think people attitude,
Right.
systemic,
Yeah.
colonialism, the Willie Lynch mentality, the divide and rule, it needs to stop. You come on this show, Miss.
Y'all were doing, not crossing you, y'all were doing organic before organic farming became the thing. I smile when I hear about, organic this and organic, but you were doing that before it became, the way that everybody now are these organic fruits and blah blah blah. Y'all were doing organic and natural before it became a thing. So perhaps and now ladies are going more and more natural in terms of their look, their style. So perhaps the world's changing a little bit, but the stereotypes are still there, and that's unfortunate. So how do we change them?
It's just our attitude and the way we are conform, but not everyone are compliant and docile slaves. We say slavery is over, but the chain and shackle might be off our hands and feet, but we have to free our minds from mental slavery.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that there's a place for everything, but you know, there's a time that we really gotta be serious and check ourselves
Yeah.
and return to the ancient traditions that have sustained our elders. I mean, Barbadian has, uh, a centenarian population, and it burns me and pains my heart every day to hear, oh, someone 90 something has passed, or it feel like it's just wiping out the elder generation, and it's sad,
Yeah.
So you have to cherish what you have,
Yeah.
and you have to give thanks for what we have and where we have come from, and pray that that we can really deal with unity and respect, and have a love for self, a love for each other. And we say we are a Christian society, and the Bible say, love your neighbor as you will love yourself. And sometimes you have to ask yourself if that is really the case. But in terms of organic foods, we try to eat as natural as possible, as healthy as possible. Sometimes we don't have the range of foods available at all the times. We try to avoid chemicals and processed food as much as possible. But, we still have to live in the real world, and you have to adapt and adjust according to your circumstance, and try to live within your means as much as possible, because not everything all the time is about money and materialism, but it's just that will to live, that just will to keep fighting on, that will to exist. And I say, we will walk in the light until, but in the meantime we have to try and take good care of ourselves, try and stay safe, try and deal with all our holistic remedies and treatments as much as possible. And just don't take it for granted. Peter, when it gets started or what
I know that's
is
okay though, because we're on the same page. I think that this pandemic has like revealed so much. It has exposed, I think, a lot of what has been wrong, what we have been doing wrong, and what needs to be course corrected. Unfortunately, some aren't course correcting. They're continuing on the same path. But I think that it has revealed so much. And I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you about the importance of you all sitting down with the scientists, because in a sense you're all scientists, and looking at the formulations and getting it right, because we need to be able to access the herbal medicines, I think, as much as we can go over the counter and get other medications which have a ton of side effects. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. think in one of my discussions here on the link up, I was saying that one of the concerns that I had was that, you know, in terms of the herbal medicine and utilizing that, you know, for me it's always been the okay, but the how much, you know, how many leaves, that sort of thing. And I think it's time that, you know, we sit down with the scientists, or the scientists and herbalists, and both are scientists in a sense, sit down and start looking at formulating and getting the information down. I remember, and you still find some in the natural health places, you see little tinctures with horehound and so on, but you still don't know the makeup, and you need to find that out, because that's where our heads are at these days. So, Irika, possibility of, you know, you, some of the elders, hopefully you'll be doing some research and getting out there in the community and looking at, you know, perhaps creating some formulations and so on that we can use.
You know, when you reach out to me to come on this program, I was saying the same thing, because in an environment where we have so many infections, virus, communicable and non-communicable diseases, we have our labs at UE, and, you know, there's scientists, there, you know, a lot of herbalists around. I honestly think there's a time where some funding could be allocated.
Great.
And the powers that be can really seriously look at it in a all earnest and seriousness, where you set up some think tanks, you know, instead of marginalizing and oppressing, bring the knowledgeable parties together, doctors and so on, who are interested in natural medicine, and try to formulate, look at what we have, see what's the phytochemicals, see what substances that in different herbs, and come up with our own remedies. A lot of research has been done in other Caribbean countries, Jamaica, Trinidad, and I know Dr. Kohal, he has published his book,
Yes.
and he's very, you know, very steadfast in, you know, the use of medicine and so on.
He's going to
herbal
join
medicine.
us when he comes back. He's out of the
Yeah,
island
and
right
then
now,
we
but
have,
he's going to come and
yeah,
join us.
and then we have Dr. Sonia Peters. You know,
Yes.
you have, she only last night, I was awarded the 2021 Botanical Treasure Award for my work
Congratulations. Well
in
done.
this field of her organization. So I know there's a lot of individuals out there working steadfastly on their own without funding, and just, you know, having that love and, you know, in the interest. And I think that this is a good time more than ever,
Mm-hmm.
when we have so many of our population, whether it is uncertainty, whether it's through fear, whether they just don't want conventional, you know,
Yeah.
drugs in their bodies. There's a good time more than ever to really respect the views and try to sit down with, you know, with us and with the scientists and the ecologists and so on, and let us go delve into our plants and come up with some tinctures, some herbal remedies, you know, that can really assist. Because I know for sure, and you've heard a lot of people say the elders or old people, they, whether it's diabetes, hypertension, whatever, they have the whole shelf full with tablets. And sometimes
Yeah.
they will say, well, once I feel better, I stop taking the tablets and I just go and drink my bush tea. So they do a balance. And I know people can confirm this,
Mm-hmm.
that that's what happened in our community. You know, we can't push our heads in the sand and say it doesn't happen. It do, because
Mm-hmm.
they, once they figure they're putting down that medication, and they are going and drink their local herbs. Then, you know, a lot of the herbs, sometimes you have the healthful shot, and some are imported in the island. But I think that in terms of conservation, in terms of preservation of our ancient ancestral practices, it is very, very, very important to encourage the youth, to transfer this knowledge and information about, our healing practices, our traditional folklore medicine
Yeah.
to the younger generation, because there's value and there's benefit in it. And at Root Ngosi's farm, that's what we try to plant, as much variety of herbs. And on New Year's Day, there's Kwanzaa coming up from the end of December. And on New Year's Day, we hope to do a farmer's market, African
Lovely.
village type, with all protocols in place,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can continue and open the year with a freshness and a brightness, that so that we can continue to showcase the products that we produce and the different products that we plant and so on.
How
So
can
yeah,
our
it's a
viewers contact you, Irika?
well, you can contact me via Facebook page, or via the Ngosi's Farm and Cultural Sanctuary Facebook page, or send me a message via Roots and Grasses Facebook page, or and I'm available. Could WhatsApp me 283-6987, and or give me a call, and we can reason. And
Okay.
and if there's any questions or any queries, I'm around. I'm still researching. I'm still working and doing my thing.
Fantastic. And don't forget, you can always send your information to me, and we will happily share it, so that,
Yes,
like for your New Year's market and stuff like that, so we can get the word out there. But what
yes,
you said is really critical, because one of the fears that I have had when taking supplements and that sort of thing is that I don't really know if these things contain what they say they contain. Um, I'm not really sure what you're putting into those supplements and so on is really doing for my body what you say it's going to do. And that's why I just feel like it's time that we have our own, that we know has been tried and true and is tested. Um, and so therefore you don't have that concern that what you're putting in your system is not real. I've seen on the internet and so on so many times notices saying, this particular product has been withdrawn because it contains, and what it contains is not what it said, it would contain. And that's a fear. And it's time the Caribbean, Barbados, that, this particular region, we put our heads together and we start sharing with the world what we have and what we know works and what we know is real.
yes, yes. I totally agree with that. And as I say, you just need the support. You just need the funding and a serious, 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 serious focus to find our own alternative remedies within the Caribbean, for
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean people, because there will always be a pushback. As I said, from my research that I'm doing now for my PhD, from all in the 1600 coming right through um, emancipation in 1800s, coming right through even now in post emancipation and post colonialism, there were always rebellion, and we are resilient people.
We are.
We are strong people. We find that inner strength within to cope with
Mm-hmm.
whatever adversity that we face. We might break down, but even with me going through, you know, all the different changing seas of life in trouble and in joy, I take you. We have the sea, the ocean, we have the springs. We should preserve those things.
Quite right.
And we have the sea moss, we have our kelp. Blend the juices, and we use our cucumber, ginger, garlic, or turmeric. And create nice blends, and the blender, the grater, the mortar and pestle, the
Mm-hmm.
stone to grind. or pepper and so on to help with circulation and to help us regain and retain our equilibrium, our
Right.
balance. So yeah, I think that there's a time more than ever that the powers that be could really, instead of the constant fight, everyone is free, everyone have a choice, but who willing go, do what you
Mm-hmm.
want. But those that want to stick to their plant-based energies and their plant-based diet and remedies, respect that, and open up avenues that they could really understand what they're doing, and that we just don't be like in the wilderness crying, but
Yes.
but they would really and truly listen in and acknowledge that there's inherent value and benefit in what we're saying.
Thank you, Irika. I wish you, your family, all the best. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your expertise with us here today. And we will certainly get the information out, when you send it about those activities coming up, especially in December and entering into the new unknown year of 2022. But we want you to
Yeah.
stay safe and stay well.
Yes.
Thank you for joining
Yes, and
me.
thank you. And there's a time when we really have to, bless up ourselves. And I want to
Definitely.
thank you and your team
You're
for having me
welcome.
on your show. And we will continue to press forward with our work in earnest.
You're
So
always
bless up yourself.
welcome. Thank you, Irika. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Okay. So glad that I got the opportunity to chat with her. Got her away from her farm, unfortunately, but I'm happy that she spent the time. And a lot of what she said, we're going to have to go back to that, living a little bit more naturally, more spiritually. And that's what this particular pandemic has uncovered, I think. And so it's how we meet the challenge and we meet the obstacle and we face it, that is going to make all of the difference. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's going to be a shortened version of the link up, a really, really hectic weekend ahead for all. I wish that you continue to follow the protocols. I don't need to tell you what they are, the masking and physical distancing and definitely the hand sanitizing. Be safe, enjoy every single moment of it, all right? And from me to you, happy independence. Stay safe and stay well.
You're welcome.